Hey everyone, it's Selwen here. Let's talk about enhancement. Now, enhancement, much like elemental, is one of those specs that are getting a sort of revamp in Shadowlands. Now, it's not a huge, crazy revamp, but it's still a meaningful one. One that is aiming to improve the spec, which, as many of you might know, had a lot of issues going into Battle for Azeroth. Now, just like Elemental, the changes can be a little bit polarizing, a little bit divisive. I think Elemental will be more divisive than Enhancement, but there's a couple of things going with the spec, some old things primarily, since the spec is going back to the pre-Legion style of play, that some Enhancement players are not gonna like. Okay? So I'm just gonna preface that. And I think that's fine. Personally, I do enjoy this new version. I think it feels more like an Enhancement Shaman. One of the things I didn't really like about the Legion Enhancement, even though I think Legion Enhancement was a fine spec, but it became too much of a melee spec. And for me, Enhancement is not just another melee spec. They are sort of a hybrid, right? They are a hybrid between a melee with ranged spells. And what they did in Legion is that they remove our shock abilities, they remove a lot of our spells like Chain Lightning. Lightning Bolt became meh, outside of one talent use. They removed a lot of the Shaman identity. So one of the philosophies in going to Shadowlands is obviously class identity, not spec identity. It's one of the reasons why Enhancement is kind of going back to pre-Legion. And I think, it's a much more unique way to approach Enhancement than just being a magical warrior, which I think is kind of what the Legion version was. You kind of just felt like a magical warrior. It was just melee abilities with fancy, colorful effects. So let's talk about what has changed primarily, how the spec is playing. And so since Maelstrom is gone, what do we have to replace it? Elemental has Fulmination, and they have Seismic Thunder, which has their issues in losing some flexibility in certain combat situations, since they are so completely separate in the core mechanics of the spec. Enhancement doesn't really have those issues. We get a Maelstrom Weapon, okay? Now, Maelstrom Weapon is something that a lot of people like, and some people, I guess a lot of people also do not like. I personally love Maelstrom Weapon. I think it's a very unique thing that Enhancement's gotten back in Wrath of the Lich King, I believe. That's when it was first introduced. And I think it's simply cool. I think it fits the overall idea of being Enhancement. So basically, if you never really know about this ability for some reason, you're essentially going to be able to build stacks. Okay? You're going to be able to build stacks up to 10. But you can only consume 5, and they're gonna increase the damage and reduce the cast time of your castable abilities. So what are those castable abilities? Well, where are they? Lightning Bolt, okay? So Lightning Bolt is back into being a core ability in the spec. This is the sort of ability that you're going to use on Maelstrom without talents. We're going to go over that in a bit. That you're going to use in single target, all right? So let me just build. Okay, so basically you get an instant cast Lightning Bolt, okay? Just, if you played Enhancement back before Legion, you know all about this. So you get that, and you also get Chain Lightning. Now, one cool thing about Chain Lightning now is that since you're still getting Crash Lightning, which is a Legion ability, there is a synergy between those two. So now, if your Chain Lightning hits more than one target, it's going to increase the damage of Chain Lightning. It's a pretty cool synergy there to just get more AoE damage out, and I do enjoy that. Chain Lightning is only hitting 3 targets, but it's going to be your ability that you're going to use in in AoE scenarios when you get a Maelstrom Weapon proc. Now, one cool thing about Maelstrom Weapon is the fact that it stacks up to 10, but you only consume 5. This means that even when you get to 5 stacks, you don't necessarily need to use the ability, so you can, plan around when you want to use it. If you're going to have other procs, which you're going to talk about, can get rid of them. You don't have to blow your load so early, and you can actually, stack up higher, say to 8 stacks, 9 stacks before you use those abilities. So you can plan around with them more. You can maximize your lightning bolts and chain lightnings a lot more, which I think is pretty cool. I really like that. It also works with your, healing abilities like Healing Surge and the new, the comeback that is Chain Heal, and that's pretty cool too. Okay, so those are one of the abilities that are back essentially. You're also getting things like imbuing your weapons. So you once again have to imbue your weapons. This is just a fantasy thing, and I guess some people might argue it doesn't really have a place in modern WoW, like enhancing your weapons and having to do it every 1 hour, just kind of like poisons on rogues. Like personally, I like this. It's a small fantasy thing for the spec, and yes, it doesn't. It's not engaging or anything like that, but it's cool. It kind of makes the spec more unique, the class more unique. I just like it. I think it makes sense. It's cool. Okay, so you have that as well. You're also getting Wind Fury Totem back. Okay, so you're getting Wind Fury Totem back, which is amazing. A lot of people jizz all over this, and including myself. I love me some Wind Fury Totem. And now, the way it works right now is actually, it's not really tied to your Wind Fury Weapon Enhance. Okay, it's a different thing, I believe. At least the tooltip says it's a different thing. I don't really have damage meters to check if the damage is actually separate. So it's giving you and party members a 10% chance to, swing an extra auto attack, which is very cool. Now, one bad thing about the Wind Fury Totem, and don't take this in the wrong way, I don't want Wind Fury Totem to go away, to be pruned again. One thing I don't like about it is because it's the only totem, and it's the only ability that you have to repeatedly place. And that's annoying, okay? That's annoying in the way that the game plays right now, in how fast-paced it is, and, this is not really, it's not classic, right? It's not TBC days. And having to constantly, like say in a Mythic Plus or in a normal dungeon, just have to going from a trash pack to trash pack and always constantly placing your Wind Fury Totem, it's annoying, okay? I'm not gonna lie, it's annoying. No matter how much I love Wind Fury Totem, it is annoying to constantly place it. I don't mind it in Classic because it's, it's a slower paced game, but current WoW isn't, so it is annoying. So I would kind of prefer to see Wind Fury Totem, like the buff, being something that comes from your abilities, like a passive, like Storm Strike. It's not as cool, granted, it's not as cool as placing a totem and buffing people, but I think it would be better for gameplay. That's all I mean, it would be better for gameplay. But nevertheless, awesome to have this ability back, simply awesome. It fits the fantasy as well of enhancement, that you're not just a DPS, that you're not just a hybrid, but you're also a sort of support, you're buffing other people, and that's really cool. I really wish Elemental also had something like that for casters, but sadly they don't. Hopefully they will get something in the future. I'm not counting on it, but would be cool. Okay, so outside of that, you're also getting your shock abilities back. Now, once again, this is enhancing, pun intended, the philosophy, the design, that enhancement is not just a melee spec. So you're getting your shocks, which have a 40-yard range. Okay, so you no longer have those weird melee attacks that are essentially the flame shock, the replacement of flame shock. I forgot its name, maybe it was flame tongue weapon. Not entirely sure. So you have your flame shock back, you have your frost shock back. That's awesome. Yeah, obviously the yard range is awesome, but again, it's a fantasy thing. Having shocks and in combination with your melee attacks is something that fits the enhancement and the shaman overall perfectly than just getting these melee attacks that just kind of feel like a regular melee, a boring melee, and this is simply more unique. Now, one thing that I do not like, and I hope they reconsider, is the fact that, yes, Frost Shock has its place. It's a slow, which is great. They share the cooldowns, which can cause some issues. We'll talk about that in a bit. What I don't like about Frost Shock is that it's kind of taking the place of the old Earth Shock that enhancements used to have. Now I know that Earth Shock is now an elemental thing. It's embedded in elemental. What I don't like about it is that you have talents and that enhance Frost Shock, which is fine. And Frost Shock now also kind of is like almost a filler type of ability that you're going to use. And what I don't like is that Frost Shock feels like a wet fart. Okay? Pressing Frost Shock is not fun. Frost Shock feels like ass. Because when you press it, you don't have this cool effect, you don't have this cool sound effect, you don't have this cool feedback that Earth Shock used to have. This bang, and it felt like a shock, right? It's just this, it's not fun, it's not satisfying, and I don't like that. And you're gonna have talents like Hailstorm that we're gonna talk about, which is really cool for Frost Shock. It makes it a much more interesting ability, a much more powerful ability, but it still hits. It still sounds like a wet fart, and I do not like that. It's a little bit of a pet peeve. It's nothing relating to gameplay. It's a subjective thing, but I just don't like how it sounds. It doesn't feel very enhancement. It doesn't feel like it should feel on enhancement. Okay, so you have that. And you also have Lightning Shield, which is now baseline. Well, I guess it was baseline. I actually don't remember. But essentially, it's just catering. It's just now working with Maelstrom Weapon and not Maelstrom and stuff like that. So it's essentially giving you a chance to get a 50% chance of generating a Maelstrom Weapon stack, which is great. So it's something else for you to keep up with your weapon enhances. Okay. Your Wolfies, your Doggos. Where are your Doggos? Your Doggos, your feral spirits is again working much like Lightning Shield. You're now just giving you Maelstrom Weapon stacks. They grant you one immediately, and then they give you one stack every 3 seconds. So again, just fueling more Maelstrom Weapons for you to do more lightning bolts and stuff like that. So working great. The idea is there. Now, one weird thing that you're gonna notice. Actually, before that. Storm Strike also changed a little bit. You don't have 2 charges anymore. You still have the procs, okay? You still have the procs, you still have the Stormbringer procs, but since you don't have 2 charges now and your special attacks can reset the cooldown of Storm Strike, it's no longer that very spammy ability, okay? It doesn't feel as spammy, which I do like. I didn't like really how spammy Storm Strike could get in BFA and in Legion. So now it's just, it's an ability, like you may get a proc. Your other abilities might give you a proc of that ability, so you go back to Storm Strike and stuff like that. It just flows better with your Storm Strikes, okay? And you're seeing that I'm getting a lot of procs. We'll talk about that. So yeah, I think that Storm Strike right now, it's in a better state than it currently is. It feels better. It doesn't feel as so intrusive, so so spammy. So you might have noticed that you don't really have a filler spell. Like I did mention that Frost Shock is kind of a filler spell, but you don't really have Rock Biter. Okay? They removed Rock Biter a few weeks ago as a sort of testing thing because currently with certain talent setups, enhancement can be a very, very busy spec to a point that it can be almost like Fury. I mean, kind of always was, but kind of like what I mean by that is that it can be very spammy. It can be very busy on your fingers. Very, very busy with certain talent setups. So it was natural for them to remove Rock Biter because you have a lot of buttons to click sometimes. Because at times, and obviously this will come down to tuning, obviously the spec right now is not perfect. There's a couple of things, there's rough edges. And so with the talent setup that I have right now that I'm going to talk about in a bit, you can get a lot of procs, you can get a lot of abilities going. So for an example, our bare bones playstyle, is placing your frame shock, is going to be doing your storm strikes, is going to be doing your lava lashes, which now have a cooldown since you no longer have Maelstrom, so it's no longer that sort of dump ability that you used to have. And you're going to be doing those abilities, right? You can use Crash Lightning, at least I use Crash Lightning single target, it also increases your storm strike damage, so why not? So you're going to be doing that, you're going to keeping Flame Shock, you're going to do your Maelstrom Lightning Bolts, Maelstrom Weapon Lightning Bolts when you get the proc. And it's simply going to flow like that. You're going to get procs, you're going to get Storm Strike procs and stuff like that. But once you go to your talents, you can get things like Hot Hand, which is going to provide a proc to Lava Lash, which comes from you melee attacking with your Flametone Weapon, which is your enhanced weapon. Now the procs is no longer that one-time use proc, it's something that is a buff that stays and reduces the cooldown and increases the damage of Lava Lash. So at times, like now, you're seeing that you're just getting so much shit going on that you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Easy, right? It's like a mad dog really going crazy on you. Like you have times like right now where nothing is really happening. I'm just waiting for cooldowns, right? I'm not really playing optimally, but you get the idea. I'm just waiting for cooldowns, right? I'm gonna get a good Maelstrom Weapon. Okay, I'm gonna use Crash Flight. Oh, I got the procs. I'm gonna use some Strike. I got the Frost Shock, and now I got the Hot Hand, and now I got the Maelstrom, right? But there's times where nothing is really happening. Okay, you don't really have nothing happening, you're just waiting for cooldowns. And then there are times you just, every proc comes to you, like every single proc. You're gonna get the Storm Strikes proc, your Maelstrom Weapon is above 5 stacks, your shocks are out of cooldown, your Flame Shock may be running out, your Lava Lash is now procced, so now you have to use Lava Lash. So there's times that it can get very busy, and it's very fun, not gonna lie, it's very, very fun. And then you're going to have to prioritize which abilities are going to press to maximize your damage and stuff like that. And that is very fun, but obviously there's a couple of things need to be done because there's times where nothing happens. And that's a little bit sad, and that's where I feel that the filler is missing. Now, obviously that's something that may come down to gear as well. But I feel that there's times where I have nothing to press, and there's other times where I have a lot to press. And so there's tuning to be done. Now, this is with this talent setup. Once you remove Hot Hand and you say go for Storm Fury, which is a talent that I don't really like, so your Wind Fury procs from your enhance is going to reduce the Storm Strike cooldown by 1 second. Okay, so the idea is the same, and I cannot really predict that or anything because it's something that is completely passive, but it's a more tamed sort of playstyle, right? You're not getting this conjuncture of procs all procking at the same time and he's just freaking out like, oh my god, what I'm gonna press now. So it's a little bit more chill, but you still get moments where I have nothing pressed. Like right now I have nothing to press. This is like a normal type of thing. Obviously I'm not using cooldowns, but you get the idea. You do get moments where you have nothing to press, and you do have moments where everything is off cooldown and you have a lot to press, essentially. So there's some balance issues there, obviously, to fix. Gear will obviously fix that as well, maybe legendaries as well, but that is something to keep in mind. So those are the two talents. I haven't mentioned the tier 1, I'll get there. So Hot Hand right now, I think it just feels the best because it gives more meaning to Lava Lash, because outside of that, Lava Lash is something that you're gonna click every 10 seconds and you just forget about it. So getting the procs of Hot Hand, it's really fun. You're just gonna get a lot more Lava Lashes in there. You can get very busy again, but it just feels better. It feels nice. It feels fun. So in the first tier here, you get Lashing Flames, which is further emphasizing, you using Lashing Flames, Lava Lash, as it places a debuff, simply increasing the flame shock damage. Pretty simple, something that you gonna keep up naturally. Okay, very, very simple. This one you already have, just increasing Wind Fury damage, whatever. Now you do get the Elemental Blast. Now Elemental Blast is something that I don't really like enhancement right now. So essentially this is gonna replace a use of your Lightning Bolt. Okay, it's essentially gonna replace a Lightning Bolt because it works with Maelstrom Weapon. Okay, let me see if I can. Where is it? Okay, so you can use with your Maelstrom Weapon. The issue with this is that since it's something that you're gonna want to maximize to get the most buffs out, the cooldowns not always align with your Maelstrom Weapon stacks, so sometimes it's kind of sucks to have Elemental Blast off cooldown, and you don't have Maelstrom Weapon stacks to use it. It feels bad. It kind of sucks. But besides that, it's an awesome ability. I always loved how Elemental Blast looked aesthetically, and I love to have it in enhancement. So I hope it works out in the end. This tier we kind of discussed. We do have Totem Mastery, which is just a boring one. You're gonna get Searing Totem, which is just the passive damage thing. Would be cool to get Wind Fury Totem with this, actually. So would be something that you're gonna place more naturally and actually would help the Wind Fury thing. But you actually don't. But they might add Wind Fury Totem to this. But it's a boring talent. It's a very boring talent. Hot Hand is where it's at. Then you have this tier. You do have a couple of very interesting things here, and yes, there is Fire Nova. I'm gonna get there. So you're gonna get Cycle of the Elements. Now this is further making the spec more busy. But the cool thing about this, and the synergy that these other talents then you're gonna create, is that this is excellent to spread your flame shocks, because your storm strikes are going to reset the cooldown, so you can spread flame shocks really easily. Right, I'm gonna spread this one, go for the storm strike, then I can spread another. So right now I have 3 flame shocks running super easily, right? And this will mean more damage overall with, I was gonna say with hot hands, but that's not the case. This will mean more damage with Flame Shock and with Lashing Flames. And with Hot Hand, if you get a proc, you're going to be able to spread your Lava Lashes to then increase the damage of those Flame Shocks. It's not super doable, but it's something that you can do. Because, procs have to align with all of that. You cannot always rely on that, but it's something that you can do. So I do like that synergy. I would like that the procs of Hot Hand would come from Flame Shock, not your Flametone Weapon, because this will mean a great synergy with Cycle of the Elements to just provide a lot of procs when you were in cleave situations. Sadly, it doesn't. But yeah. Then you have Hailstorm. Storm, not Storm. This is also pretty cool because it's adding a lot more meaning to Frost Shock, and it's making it cleave up to 5 targets, which is pretty big, and the damage is actually insane, but tuning things may change because this is alpha. So essentially, let's say I'm in a cleave scenario, right, and I'm gonna use my Chain Lightning, I'm gonna get 5 stacks of Hailstorm, and then boom, right, you get this this big Frost Shock bomb that feels very, very nice. I do really like Storm. God damn it. The only thing I do not like is the fact that they lose Cycle of the Elements, and that feels really nice to spread your Flame Shocks. But Hailstorm is more bursty, so if mobs die quick, Flame Shocks are not going to take enough, so it might not be worth. So Hailstorm might be better for those situations, and that's pretty goddamn cool. Then you have Fire Nova. Now Fire Nova is also very awesome. I loved Enhancement in WoD with Fire Novas. Man, that was awesome. Yeah. So basically the way it works now is that you're gonna place a Flame Shock, and then you're gonna be able to use a Fire Nova. Right now it has a shitty effect that doesn't do it justice to the ability, which is really sad, but you get the idea. Now, obviously, the idea with this and the skill cap involved with this is being able to spread your Flame Shocks and then use it. So set up and then the big payoff. Now, the only thing I wish we could have is this in combination with Cycle of the Elements. That would be OP as shit. But sadly, we cannot do that. But it still feels great, right? So let's imagine I'm in a dungeon, right? I'm just AoEing and stuff like that. So I'm just spreading my Flame Shocks as much as possible. And then I have 3 now, and I just do 1 big Fire Nova. So that's the idea with it. I really like it. Just the effect needs to get an update, because right now I feel really like ass. But yeah, I really like Fire Nova. So in general, I really like this tier. Obviously, some tweaking left to be done. Fire Nova only hits 6 targets, so it has a really shitty target cap. So yeah, but it's still very fun to use. The setup and then the build up, the setup and then the payoff. It feels very satisfying. Then we get Stormkeeper. Now Stormkeeper, well, it was really weird to see this in Enhancement. Now it's cool, and it actually works really simple. Like, you would think, oh, it's something crazy, you're gonna have to precast it, and well, yeah, you can precast on an opener, but the cool thing about it is that it's just gonna replace the click of your lightning bolt. So essentially what you want to do is, when you get a proc, you simply use Stormkeeper, right? You get it. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and this is probably a mistake that a lot of people will do when they go for Stormkeeper, at least if it stays this way, is that they're going to forget that Maelstrom Weapon stacks also increase the damage of the ability. So yes, you get an instant cast lightning bolt, but you also need to have the stacks. So you need to remember that, and that's cool because Sometimes I actually forget and I just use them outright, and you're gonna lose a lot of damage, 100% damage. So that is something to take in mind. The only sucky thing is the fact that you have a timer on Stormkeeper, and for some reason, if you don't have the stacks ready to go, you might handicap yourself a lot. So that is something to keep in mind. At first you think, okay, I'm just gonna use it on Maelstrom proc, right? And then I'm just gonna use those lightning bolts back to back, and that's it. No, you have to take in mind that you also need the 5 stacks to maximize the damage of that ability. So maybe, gonna stack up Maelstrom Weapon without overcapping, obviously, and then go for it. So there's cool decisions to be made there. I just think that the duration of the buff should be a little bit longer, so it gives you time to actually get the stacks to use it properly. Okay. And one thing to keep in mind, obviously you can use this with Chain Lightning, is that you're going to get a lot of stacks, a lot of Maelstrom stacks in AoE. So when you're doing Crash Lightnings and then you're cleaving with Storm Strike and Lava Lash and stuff like that, your Maelstrom stacks are going to go up like crazy. So you don't really need to worry about Chain Lightnings and then, Stormkeeper Chain Lightning and stuff like that. You get a lot of stacks in cleave fights. A lot of stacks, which is really cool. I might put some footage in the background for that. And then the other talents, it's the same things as before, Crashing Storm, which is something that you don't have to worry about too much. It's going to give the thing. And you still have Sundering. Now, Sundering for AoE just right now, obviously this is alpha, tunings might change and stuff like that, but this just feels so much more powerful than Stormkeeper because, Stormkeeper on Enhancement, Chain Lightning on Enhancement just hits 3 targets, right? Sundering, as of yet, still hits all targets, by what I can tell. So obviously there's a target cap there, a handicap that Stormkeeper has. If it hits 5 targets like in Elemental, could be more interesting, but Sundering still feels very powerful in comparison to Stormkeeper. But in a single target Stormkeeper, it's great. It's really good. Really good, really good. And then on last tier talent, everything is the same as before. I still don't like Elemental Spirits. It's unnecessary RNG. Okay, it's super unnecessary RNG on your Wolfies, on your Dogos. I don't really like that because the buffs are still the same as before. Like you still have the Icy Edge, you still have the Molten Weapon, you still have the Storm Strike buff and stuff. So this is something that they might change still in the future, but I don't think is really fitting with the way that the spec is right now. But yeah, overall, again, it's feeling good. Obviously, again, rough edges, things to tune, things to work out still. But I think the idea is here. It's a fast-paced spec, a very fast-paced. Just about cooldowns, just about using as much abilities as you can, managing your Maelstrom weapons to put out as much spells as you can, as much bolts as you can. You get sports buffs like Fury, you get more healing, and then you have those sort of more skillful things that you can do, like spreading flame shocks for fire novas, or maximizing your shocks with Psyche of the Elements, maximizing your hailstorm, frost shocks. But again, I think the idea is here. It flows really well. The filler stuff I still needs to be decided, because there's weird moments where not having a filler kind of sucks, but also having a filler would feel like it's too much buttons. So it's a weird thing going on right now, but for the most part, overall, it's on the right track. So that covers the main spec. That was a lot of talk, Jesus Christ. So there's Covenant abilities to talk about, and now Covenant abilities on Enhancement, it's a little bit sad because it's a little bit boring. Like, I'm not gonna lie, the Enhancement abilities, the Shaman abilities just feel more catered, whatever, I think you know what I mean, towards Elemental and Restoration. So like the Kieran ability, Vesper Totem, is the one that feels the best on Enhancement. Essentially, you're going to place a totem, and your next 3 damaging spells or abilities are going to cause that totem to explode for extra AoE damage. This simply works fine, right? You're going to place it, you're going to combine, you're going to stack up with your CDs, and it's just extra damage. Okay, it's fine. Okay, it can also works rather with healing spells, so you can get some bursts of healing there as well. But it's simple. Place it, extra damage, right? Some synergy with the spec, which is cool. But then the other ones, like for example Chain Harvest. Chain Harvest is a Venthyr Covenant ability. It's essentially a more fancy Chain Lightning. It is going to improve your AoE because it has rather a much higher target cap, and it's going to work with your Maelstrom Weapon as well. Okay, even though some of the footage that I have isn't. But yeah, it does work with Maelstrom Weapon. It's essentially going to replace your Chain Lightning click, okay? Your Chain Lightning press. Okay, it's just a fancy Chain Lightning that you can press for extra damage, and that's it. Then you have Primordial Wave. This is awesome in Elemental. This is not as awesome in Enhancement. It's still pretty cool, okay? So it's extra setup, a very similar setup to Fire Nova, so this is probably something that you want to combine with Fire Nova. Essentially, you're going to get the Primordial Wave, which is a new spell, which also works with Maelstrom Weapon, that will apply Flame Shock. And then you're going to get a buff where your next Lightning Bolt will strike all targets that have Flame Shock. Okay, so it's a cool setup. Okay, it's a very similar setup, again, if you're playing with Fire Nova. And it will also work really well if you don't want to use Fire Nova. It will work amazingly with Cycle of the Elements. So you're going to be able to spread Flame Shock like crazy, so you can do the big Lightning Bolt AoE. The only thing I don't like about this is that it doesn't feel as cool as Elemental. I mean, it's simple as that, because in Elemental you're getting Lava Bursts, which feel awesome to AoE with. But here, it simply doesn't feel as satisfying. It is still good, it still is very good, at least for AoE situations, for multi-target situations, and you have some synergy with your talents, and the spec itself, it just doesn't feel as good, but still is pretty interesting. Then you have Fey Transfusion, which is the Night Fey Covenant ability. This one is very clunky for Enhancement, very, very clunky. Now, it's not working with Maelstrom Weapon, at least not as the time of recording, because it's the channel ability. Now in Elemental I didn't like it because again it's a channel ability that deals a lot of AoE damage, but Enhancement, just stopping everything and then just channel this AoE radius ability just feels like ass. Again, feels very clunky, doesn't feel fun at all. Even though the ability itself is very fun to look at, it feels very satisfying to press, but gameplay wise it doesn't flow good. So again, overall, Covenant abilities, nothing super exciting for Enhancement, so yeah. But again, in general, Enhancement is in a pretty good spot as of yet. Obviously, again, there's still work to be done, but the idea is here. You get your Maelstrom weapons, which are very fun to use, you get management with that, you get this proc-based playstyle, this cooldown-based playstyle with your Storm Strikes, with your Lava Lashes, with your Shocks, that feels very Enhancement, that feels very shamanistic, that feels very shaman. You get some pretty interesting talents, some pretty interesting setups, some pretty interesting synergies with spec that has cool payoffs, but again, there's still things to iron out. Okay guys, that covers it for Enhancement. It's a pretty big one, but there was a lot to talk about. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.